Imagine living in a time period where there was a serial killer loose in your neighborhood. Imagine the agony. Imagine the anticipation. Imagine the stress. Imagine the anxiety, the nervousness, the sleepless nights, and the complete state of turmoil among your community, your cities, your cops, and officials. An entire period where God came to save you. Imagine this sort of lifestyle brought upon a county near you and your loved ones. This state of chaos happened not too long ago in Marble, Southern California. For those who experienced it, the name and appearance holds an explicit remembrance in people's minds. As a young boy hearing the story from my grandfather, it sent chills all the way down from my head to toes. I became intrigued by the story, not because I admire the killer's sins. I have no intention of whatsoever becoming a serial killer, but because of the fact that he hit one of the cities that I live in now, and he killed two people that my parents and grandparents knew. That's what made me so intrigued. That's what made me conduct more research about this topic. Today, I would like to describe to you a horrific time period in which Richard Ramirez had much scarcity and pain in California. I will describe a brief background of his childhood into his adulthood, and a story of how he killed his victims and how we eventually led up to his capture. Richard Leyva, publicly known as Richard Ramirez, or his nickname was kind of the Night Stalker, was born in 1916, raised in the soils of El Paso, Texas. He was the youngest of six and was described by his family as being epileptic. His disorder consisted of attacks on the nervous system, resulting in loss of attention, memory loss, and sleeplessness and convulsions. Besides the fact, his father described him as being naturally a good boy. As he was growing up, he became very fond of his cousin Mike. He served in the Vietnam War, and he admired him greatly. As they grew in age, they hung out together and had a consistent relationship, and they would talk about the war and smoke marijuana. One day, Richard experienced his cousin Mike shoot his cousin Mike's wife in the face. The majority would say that witnessing his cousin killing his wife is what started Richard's delinquency. From then on, by the age of 18, he became a frequent drug user and a constant candy eater, and everywhere he went with him, he carried this awful stench and smell. He also became very fond of Satan worshiping. Ramirez, being arrested on different accounts of drug and theft charges in Texas, decided to explore his roots in California. It was in California where he began simple thefts and breaking and entering into lingering in people's houses and smuggling through people's belongings. On June 28, 1984, his regular breaking and entering turned into the beginning of his killing streak. His first house, he entered through an open window in Glasgow Park. According to a book written by Philip Carl, the Night Stalker became very angry when he didn't find anything valuable to steal. He then stabbed that 79-year-old woman, and after he stabbed her, he raped her and sodomized her. Eventually, also according to Philip Carlo, he was very aroused by the act of killing. After the incident, he was quiet for 8 months. He came back again in the spring of 1985. This time it was a 22-year-old woman, and the location was outside the victim's condo. He shot the 22-year-old Angela Barrio and walked right past her into the condo. Inside the condo was a roommate. He shot him right away. Luckily, the 22-year-old Angela survived the shooting as she put her hands up and the bullet ricocheted off her keys. That night, he killed a person and injured one, and his appetite still wasn't satisfied. That same night, he struck again in Monterey Park, killing a 79-year-old woman. And by the time the police arrived, she had 3 bullet wounds in her, and it was too late. She had died before he entered the hospital. As the killing 2 women in one night was enough, Ramirez struck again in Eagle Rock, this time raping a 9-year-old girl. A week later, he reemerged in Whittier, and these are the people that my parents and grandparents knew. It was Mr. and Mrs. Azara. It was Vincent Azara. He had been shot in the left temple as he was sitting on the sofa. He died instantly, suffered no pain. As far as Mrs. Azara, she had been also killed, and she was found on the bed with bullet wounds, stab wounds in her groin, her head, and her face, and she had been subjected to a great amount of pain, and her eyes were gouged out. At the end of the scene, there was a T-shaped logo on her breast, and a pentagram left on the wall with blood. This is what the pentagram looks like. That's what he left on the wall. It's an occult symbol created by philosophers and many thinkers, and it just represents magical and mystical significance. That's what it has. On May 30th, Ramirez broke into a Burbank home with Carol Cloud. He woke her up by shining a flashlight into her face in order for her to get out of bed. He tied up her son and handcuffed him and put him in the closet. He jumped in the... Carol assumed that Ramirez was a burglar and offered him one of her most valuable possessions. It was a diamond and gold necklace. He was lingering around the house, and he found more stuff that he took with him. He eventually raped her. He cuffed her up, raped her, and she ended up throwing up by the smell of his hot, foul breath. He had an awful appearance. And he said that she looked pretty good for her age, so he eventually let her live. And the police, she actually lived and she gave a description of the police. And those that also survived also gave a description of being tall, a dark Latino with Mexican with long hair, and foul smelling. And this was a police description that they used. It was a police sketch. That's what they had for the majority of the time period, around 8 months. His streak went on for about a year and a half, but for the majority of the speech, this is what they used as reference of the killer. My parents described the time period as being one of the most horrific time periods of their life. It was a hot summer. They had to close all their windows at night, lock all the doors, bring in their dogs, and my father was describing the way they would have their wooden bats nearby, and my grandpa was Smith & Wesson. Having a police description of the subject made it even one step closer to find the killer. On August 24, 1985, he traveled 50 miles out of LA. He broke into the home of Bill Carnes. Ramirez shot Bill Carnes in the head and raped his fiancée. He demanded his fiancée to swear her love to Satan. After he raped his fiancée, he basically just tied her up, raped her, and then left. The fiancée was actually able to see the car. It was a yellow Chevy that he had been driving. A person in the neighborhood also took down the license plate number, and they had more clues and more evidence to find the car. They finally, by his fingerprints, they came up with identification, and that's him. That's the identification picture. That was sent in all the newspapers, all of the major commercial industrial buildings, and on the news and TV as well. So people actually had a pretty good picture of the subject. It was a few days after that, he had been lingering through East LA. He went into a liquor store, and one of the women working there noticed him and started yelling that he was a night stalker. He then ran out the store and was running, and he actually looked for a car. So he tried to steal a car, but failed. As he was doing all this, there was a mob of Mexicans they had clubs and iron cables and stuff like that, and they eventually caught up to him, beat him down, and waited for the police to come. By the time the police got there, he was begging for his mercy by the police. That's how bad the Latinos took care of him. According to Charles, he finally been caught, and as well as many others, everybody wanted to finally hear what their verdict was going to be. It took 4 years, and according to Charles Montalvo, out there at the end of the Night Stalker, on September 20, 1989, Richard Ramirez was found guilty on 43 counts, including 13 evidential murders along with